Trump says he'll impose new 100% tariff on China, over and above current rates. Massively escalating trade war. President Donald Trump said on Friday that he would impose a 100% tariff on China, over and above any tariff they are currently paying, starting November 1st, massively escalating his trade war amid a heated dispute over export controls on rare earth elements. In a post on Truth Social, Trump wrote that China had taken an extraordinarily aggressive stance on trade by sending an extremely hostile letter to the world, declaring that, as of November 1st, 2025, they would impose large-scale export controls on virtually every product they manufacture, and even on some products not manufactured by them. This affects all countries, without exception, and was obviously a plan devised by them years ago, he wrote. It is absolutely unprecedented in international trade and a moral disgrace in relations with other nations. Trump said he would impose the new tariff on November 1st or earlier, depending on any other actions or changes taken by China. Earlier, Trump had criticized Chinese leader Xi Jinping on social media for China's intensified efforts to impose export controls on crucial rare earths, threatening economic retaliation and stating that he no longer saw any reason to meet with Xi during a scheduled visit to the region later this month. At the time, Trump also threatened to impose economic sanctions on China, warning, "Depending on what China says about the hostile order they just issued, I will be forced, as President of the United States of America, to financially oppose this initiative. For every element they managed to monopolize, we have too," he added. Beijing tightened its sweeping restrictions on rare earth exports on Thursday, expanding the list of controlled minerals and extending regulations targeting their production technologies and their overseas use, including for military and semiconductor applications. The actions targeted a major U.S. vulnerability, which had driven a significant effort by the Trump administration in recent months to identify and rapidly expand domestic mining and production capacity. The move immediately triggered alarm within the administration, according to several government officials. The measure came at a moment when Beijing was seeking to increase its leverage in trade negotiations with the United States, ahead of an expected meeting between Xi and Trump on the sidelines of the APEC summit in South Korea later this month. Some administration officials saw this as a clear effort by Xi to secure influence before his planned face-to-face meeting with Trump, while others pointed to U.S. export control actions that may have triggered a Chinese response. Trump initially suggested on Truth Social that the meeting was now at risk. Greater than, "I haven't spoken to the president because there was no reason to," he wrote. "It was a real surprise, not only to me, but to all the leaders of the free world. I was supposed to meet with the president in 2 weeks at APEC in South Korea, but now there seems to be no reason for it." But when later asked whether the event had actually been cancelled, Trump responded, "I didn't cancel it, but I don't know if we'll have it. But I'll be there anyway, so I assume we might." White House officials viewed China's action this week as a dramatic escalation that could jeopardize the meeting even before Trump had publicly made his threat on social media, according to a senior administration official and a source familiar with the matter. There was also internal frustration within the White House after the U.S. Department of Commerce expanded the number of Chinese companies on a waiting list for export controls late last month, a move that could have angered China, sources said. China had invited Trump to visit Beijing during his trip to Asia later this month, but with no clear proposal, the Trump administration declined the invitation, according to the senior official. They instead agreed to work toward a sideline meeting at the economic summit. Trump also criticized China on Friday for announcing its measures on Thursday, suggesting it might have overshadowed his attempts to secure a peace deal between Israel and Hamas. The Chinese letters were especially inappropriate, Trump wrote, as this was the day when, after 3,000 years of chaos and conflict, there was to be peace in the Middle East. Was that a coincidence? A push for a critical resource. Trump's remarks underscored the clear anxiety tied to Xi's dominance over a market critical to the national security of the United States and its Western allies. Senior Trump officials summoned executives from technology and rare earth companies as part of their effort to accelerate development across the entire supply chain required for domestic production, officials said. The message conveyed, through meetings and conference calls over the summer, centered on the urgent need to mitigate risks exposed by China's actions earlier in the year. The administration's efforts included announcing a $400 million equity investment in MP Materials Corporation, the only U.S. rare earth producer, and setting a government-backed minimum price to strengthen its operations. However, U.S. officials acknowledged that the overall effort would still take time and, as a result, would leave the country and its allies vulnerable to Xi's strategic whims in the short term. That reality formed the basis for several rounds of U.S.-China trade negotiations in recent months and has been a central focus of Trump's approach to Xi ahead of the planned meeting. China's dominance has long been a concern, ever since the country's control of the market was exposed during a maritime dispute with Japan in 2010. But Trump's decision to threaten an expanding trade war with China, while the U.S. actively sought to restrict Western technology critical to China's national and economic security, triggered Xi's most aggressive moves yet to leverage that market dominance. It was a truly eye-opening moment for the entire world. A senior U.S. official told CNN about China's actions earlier this year. A seismic geopolitical moment when everyone realized the scale of the vulnerability. Stocks plunge amid fears of a new trade war. Wall Street investors took Trump seriously after his initial threat of economic retaliation on Friday. Stocks plummeted following the president's morning post on social media. The Dow Jones fell 879 points, or 1.9%. The S&P 500, a broader index, dropped 2.71%, and the Nasdaq Composite, a technology index, declined 3.56%. Tariff anxiety had already peaked earlier this year, when retaliatory tariffs raised taxes on Chinese imports to a minimum of 145%. Stocks nearly entered a bear market in April, and fears only began to ease later that month when the Trump administration exempted smartphones and electronics from Chinese tariffs, a significant concession that marked the first sign of a potential breakthrough in what had been an effective embargo on all Chinese products entering the U.S. By May, both China and the United States had significantly reduced tariffs, and markets soon reached new record highs. Although Trump eventually increased tariffs on exports from dozens of countries to the U.S., tariffs on China remained relatively low, keeping economic strain at a manageable level. That's why stocks are sinking again on Friday. The market had largely ignored Trump's tariffs because the trade dispute with China was, in practice, a sleeping giant. Negotiations had been slow, but managed to keep higher tariffs under control. Now that the giant may have awakened, investors are once again experiencing Liberation Day fears. And with good reason. Trade with China is crucial to the U.S. economy, especially before the holiday season, hence the sharp declines in Amazon and Target shares. And amid the surge in artificial intelligence, where technology stocks were among the most affected on Friday. Tensions have been building for months. Both China and the U.S. recently reinforced export controls on key products, including rare earths and AI chips. In recent months, both sides have launched investigations into major companies from each country and imposed high port fees. The US has also threatened to block student visas and imposed new export controls on software tools, aerospace equipment, and ethane, a key petroleum byproduct used in China.